Okay, now we're moving on. For anyone who is just coming into the room, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is, of course, the African ICT Alliance 11th Summit with the team transforming Africa's economy through digitization for sustainable development. We welcome everyone as we go into the fifth session, which will be focusing on cybersecurity strategies for emerging technologies. And the right person, of course, to lead us into that discussion as the moderator will be our indefatigable cybersecurity expert, someone who is of exceptional notice, of course, in that particular field. No other person than Mr. Yusuph Kileo. Mr. Yusuph Kileo, I've seen you, gearing up for this session. Godspeed. Okay, we're having technical glitches. Okay, so while we wait, for Yusuph Kileo, who I see your camera up, your audio is next, please. Great. Over to you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon, well done.
All right, thank you. Actually, I'm happy that the summit is progressing very well, and we are now at the fifth session, which is cybersecurity strategies for emerging technologies. A very good title, and I believe at the end of this session we'll be able to capture a lot of good things that we can be able to get back to our organizations and apply them. I would like to start first with the introduction or introducing my panelists. I'm told I have Samwel Omale, cybersecurity analyst, with us at this particular panel sessions, and I also have Ambassador Segun from Araba Technologies, and I also have Mr. Terence Fogarty from Carbon Vector, and of course Ms. Trisel Yaobi from A&M group of company. Today's session, I think we are going to explore the emerging technologies, not only in cybersecurity that can and shape our cybersecurity, and of course we are going to discuss the issue of how we can make use of these emerging technology to make sure that our cybersecurity is actually in good shape. I think this is what we are going to look at, and to start with, allow me to give a bit of introduction to these emerging technologies in related to cybersecurity. I think we have seen a massive headlines on artificial intelligence, machine learning, zero trust, a new buzzword that is currently many people speak of, blockchain technology, and many other things, including IoT security. And of course, we have seen these emerging technology come and shape the way things are in progress across many countries, not only in Africa, but global, in a global arena. We have seen Internet of Things, how it changes how it changes the way we see things, the way we interact with things. Before we were unable to our car to recognize us, the houses, the smart houses, the TVs, and so on that we have today. And unfortunately now the digitization and many things that are happening in our countries we have seen things are currently changing in a better way. But unfortunately, on the other hand, we become very vulnerable when it comes to cyber attacks. We have seen a number of cases in our African countries. We have seen a number of cases beyond African countries where criminals managed to shut down our electricity, managed to destabilize our critical infrastructures, managed to do many harm to our people and our technologies. So these things become a troubling thing, and really, I think it's good for us to address and talk about it at length. And I believe we as a group of practitioner in the field of cybersecurity and ICT at large, I think it's our role and to make sure that the technology that we use, the technology that we apply to make sure that our life are getting easier, are not only giving us benefits, but also cyber criminal do not make use of them to destabilize our equilibriums, to destabilize our the way we interact with these technologies and so on and so on. So to begin, allow me to welcome my panelists one by one to introduce themselves and to tell us a brief about themselves, and from there I'll start interacting with them. And I believe at the end of this interaction, we will be able to capture a lot of good stuff. Let me start with a good friend of mine, Ambassador Segun from Araba Technologies. Over to you.
Okay. Hello, Chairman. Good morning from Nigeria. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Please, can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I want to appreciate the organizer, the program director. I also want to thank our chairman and everyone. My name is Segun Olugbile, the MD of Araba Technology Limited. My background has always been within the context of a cybersecurity governance. So I think I'm happy to join you, and I look forward to a fantastic session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Segun. I'll move on to Samwel Omale. Introduce yourself.
All right, thank you very much. Kindly confirm you can hear me.
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Samwel Omale, and I work with Afenoid Enterprise Limited. I'm actually standing in for the CEO of Afenoid Enterprise Limited, who is unavoidably absent, right? So to start with, I would like to thank the organizers of the 11th Summit. It's been interesting following since yesterday. It's been interesting conversations across board, and I trust that this panel session wouldn't be different also. So I look forward to an engaging discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omale. Let me move on to Ms. Crystal Yaobi. Introduce yourself. Thank you. Ms. Crystal, are you there? All right, let me move on to Mr. Terence Fogarty.
Thanks very much, Yusuph. My name's Terence Fogarty. I'm from Common Vector and based in Johannesburg, South Africa. And yeah, just want to say also thanks for the opportunity to present today and to obviously have these kind of conversations around this topic with the other panelists. Thanks.
Thank you, Miss Crystal. Are you there? Secretariat, can you confirm if Ms. Crystal is with us? Can you confirm with us, Secretariat, that Ms. Crystal is with us?
Unfortunately, we got a feedback from her shortly before the session starts that she is having an emergency that she's attending to.
All right, no problem. So I'll carry on with three panelists that we have today. That's Segun and Terence. Me to start with Samwel Omale. Samwel Omale, what do you think? What are the challenges and opportunities in these emerging technologies and cybersecurities that you probably see and can be able to share with us? Samwel, are you there?
Oh, yes, I am. Apologies, I was speaking. I didn't know I was muted. All right. Thank you very much for that. You initially gave a background to what emerging technologies are, and I also believe we have, people who have an understanding of what emerging technologies are on the core, right? So for me, if you want to look at the opportunities, it's just the fact around that we have technologies who are able to help enable, what we do in the technical space, all around the world. And they are currently making things a lot easier. When you look at artificial intelligence, you look at things around machine learning, you look at Internet of Things, right? So these technologies are here to stay, whether we like it or not. And they're already changing the way businesses work, right? They change the way even homes work these days now. So there are quite a lot of opportunities attached to these emerging technologies. For the challenges, well, across board, you would agree with me that there are challenges around ethical concerns, right? So you have ethical considerations. There are some school of that, this emerging technologies are here to take our jobs. They are here to make things complex, right? When you look at AI, for instance, and the like of biotechnology, right? So there are certain barriers around that, right? You see a challenge around security and privacy also. So with increased technology and, connectivity and data sharing, there's a sort of heightened risks of cyber attacks, data breaches, unauthorized use of personal information is also there. And then regulation and legal frameworks also, right? So in as much as there are rapid technological advancements from out of space, as you want to call it, there's still challenges around how, countries and even, organizations develop regulatory and legal frameworks around the use of, these emerging technologies. Also, one thing that is worthy of note is, interoperability, like how are these technologies able to interoperate between themselves, right? Just to ensure seamless communications, and then, compatibility is also a thing. So these are just a few of the opportunities and challenges, around the use of these emerging technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omale. I think we have seen our life getting very easier when we speak about the opportunities. Nowadays, our life are getting very easy because of these emerging technologies, things like AI. I remember the other time I was listening to people who are working in the creating or writing different newsletters and stuff like that, saying that now those DTP charts taking over, and they're doing a great stuff compared to how human beings are doing the thing. So we have seen many other things that are currently happening. The sort of IoT, Internet of Things, and the smart and clean mobility, smart health services and all. So we have a lot of great stuff and things that really are there to make our life much easier. And the most interesting part of all these is the way we now transact, the way we operate. We do transaction in our home, and we don't have to travel to reach to banks, but we can just use our mobile phones and so on. So all these things have been simplified with these emerging technologies, and we really find them really useful for how they advance or put our life quite easier. But as you have said, which is also an interesting part, that whenever the technology gets better and easier or make our life easier, on the other side, we have cyber criminals take advantage of those technologies to destabilize our equilibrium and so on. So you mentioned a few things, which I wouldn't want to repeat, but indeed, these are things that we have to address and talk of it at length. So now let's move on to my brother Terence. I think Terence, the story of cyber security, how we secure our not only data, money, and all our critical infrastructure, become one of the challenging things in most of African countries. And we see country falling victims easily. We see organization experiencing a lot of challenges of losing data, money, and so on. So on your view, Mr. Terence, what do you think is lacking or is bringing all these troubles to our African continent? What is it that we're not doing right, to an extent where you keep hearing a lot of news that people are suffering a lot from these kind of challenges that is because Terence?
Yeah, thanks, Yusuph. Actually, do you have a bit of a slide deck on this? Are you happy for me to show it on screen and I can run through that quickly, which touches on your question there?
No problem, no problem.
Okay, sure. Let me share that. Is that coming across all right for everybody there? Perfect. Yeah, so Yusuph, to address your question there, I think we have to look at a few of the technologies and then kind of work backwards towards what type of technologies we do have in place to combat that from a security perspective. So I've got just a few slides here. It's the first slide just talks about obviously what emerging technologies are themselves. I mean, I think we're all on the same page when it comes to this around any technology that you've seen a massive adoption on it recently, that it's still somewhat in the early stages, but it's getting a lot more traction. Yusuph, you mentioned there about various AI being probably the most predominant ones that we hear over and over again in every article, every session we're in. But there's obviously been quite a considerable amount of traction. If we pick on AI particularly currently, I mean, if you look back, it's always been a buzzword for the last 20 years or so, but we've actually seen such massive adoption, and tools like ChatGPT, for example, and those similar technologies, and obviously from the both Bard on the Chrome side or the Microsoft side jumping on board with that as well. So there's been all these technologies are becoming more and more part of our lives, and finding and obviously introduce a whole bunch of different concerns around that from a cybersecurity point of view, both internationally and obviously here in Africa as well. Just to touch on some of those, I mean, obviously AI is something we spoke of there around, focusing on generative AI, that where it's obviously producing information based on large data sets. We've seen now with the advance of like ChatGPT Pro in version 4 that it's picking up information, it's taking information that's more current instead of based on a subset of data from 2019 and backwards. So that's obviously made quite a considerable change in just our working environments. There's obviously a whole host of other areas. I'm not going to go through them each of them, for the sake of time in this session, but things like augmented or virtual reality is becoming quite prominent. There's the development of things like the new Quest, the Oculus Quest, which is owned by Facebook, that have the Oculus series. I know personally I have the Oculus One, and already the jump now to the Oculus 3 is quite considerable in terms of various pass-through modes, which is more augmented reality. And being able to see, you can see that picture in the top right there, where it's identifying and saying, okay, if you walk along the street, just say, okay, you can, that's obviously more built for a European context there, but rent a bike and where the museum is and all that. But I mean, that can be something used across the whole world for that kind of level of interaction with things around us. A lot of these items have taken off. I mean, 3D printing has become quite fantastic in how they've been able to print. I mean, the example on the left bottom quadrant there around, almost 3D printing human hearts. So there's a lot of areas where we've been using that for even areas in the medical field as well. So, but yeah, I mean, we could talk about these for quite some time. I think for the sake of time, I want to jump into the cybersecurity side. I did actually just want to reference a bit of a joke here on this around, this is obviously the context around a board meeting and saying, okay, how do we prevent our next cybersecurity breach? And, generally the comments would be using a lot of these newer technologies to circumvent that. But I think we must just keep in mind throughout is that basic access controls or basic controls must always be considered, even though there's new ways of, and we'll talk about them now in the next couple of slides, but we mustn't forget the basics, the policies, inherent change control, doing secure backups, ensuring they're encrypted. All of those components are still quite prevalent. So we really mustn't forget any of those when talking about this. So what I wanted to, and this comes back to your question, Yusuph, there about how do we secure these technologies, and I know you asked in our particular context, but I think these areas can be taken from a global sense as well. So I think one of the first areas, which was also mentioned a little bit earlier in the chat here around ZTNA, Zero Trust Architecture, or Zero Trust Network Access, should I say, is the proper acronym. So really around that is just various ways that we can try and secure our various technologies. So we talked about things like the different types of devices that we have. We talked about things that are hosted, or different web applications that are hosted online. The fact of having these kind of newer technologies that link into these emerging technologies, something like Zero Trust does ensure that we only have access to what we need. In the old days, it was very much around having firewalls and just whitelisting or blacklisting certain information to ensure that you have access to that. But now we can put in a lot more stringent controls in terms of really protecting. I mentioned some of the use cases there. So restricting things like access to confidential information, and especially if you have public-facing systems, and you obviously want to try and secure those as best as possible using if it's a web application, for example, do your penetration testing and vulnerability scanning on it. But on top of that, you can apply these kind of principles as well to only permit, it's all based really on least privilege, to say, okay, do we really only have access to what we need, and ensuring that the device connecting to it is secured so that it can't introduce any further vulnerabilities. So an example of that might be enforcing using one of those tools, and I've mentioned a few of them there. Obviously not to promote any of them, just to give examples of what technologies can be used or what software can be used for this purpose, and enforcing the end user to on their machine only have a particular endpoint detection response system, an NDR, and that'll only allow those users to connect to that environment once they've got a certain set of protocols enabled, or software, in that case, an EDR. So these in order to sort of combat the emergence of new technologies, we have to embrace the different kinds of security mechanisms that we have available. So using something like ZTNA for your infrastructure, or whoever you deal with, various businesses or various clients, they would want to consider that for that purpose. IoT is something quite prominent. We talk about things like Google Home and Alexa, all these devices that are listening to us 24/7 on everything we say. You talk about something in the house, and suddenly you talk about getting a new watch, for example, and then the next thing you see on Facebook or Instagram is an advert for a new watch, or a watch advert. So these devices are permanently listening to us, and that obviously introduces a whole host of issues. There have been some of the examples there on the bottom right is around 3 different devices that I'd like to maybe just make mention to. UFA, I'm actually not exactly sure how to pronounce it. I think it's UFA. Is it's an offshoot of the company Anchor, and they've been actually under fire recently, where they released articles saying that the traffic is encrypted. It's end-to-end encryption, so that you can't intercept the traffic. But there were some researchers that actually tested that out and determined that wasn't the case. Raised it with the company, but unfortunately they responded in quite a bad way and sort of took it quite negatively and didn't combat the issue. I believe now they have, but it's been a bit of a long road for them, and it doesn't help try and promote their brand if they're quite anti putting in this, those kind of security measures for that purpose. What is quite scary is on the medical devices and I've made a reference there, is those implant devices listed there that are quite susceptible to, and I've seen it even some of the clients we have as well that are in the medical fields. It's the medical professionals generally don't take a very proactive stance to security, and it's something that they leave sort of as an afterthought. And it's obviously, focus wants to be around ensuring the device actually works for patients and so forth. But at the same time, security needs to be considered so that you can't do remote. There have been cases where there's been remote attacks on individuals running pacemakers, for example. And if you can do a bit of Googling on that. There's actually quite a bit of research done in that field to try and prevent these kind of things, because it becomes quite scary where you could remotely cause an effect on somebody's pacemaker if they are wearing one. And then Ring's quite a popular system for home entry. It's a camera that you can place, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, and for getting people into your house as a perimeter camera. And they've also had issues where people have been able to connect into these devices without having them properly secured down. So IoT, having those, we mentioned there's example tools there. Are areas where you can try and scan your equipment, see if they're publicly accessible. Shodan particularly, we use it quite a lot with our clients, where it's a good way to determine if that IP address is vulnerable externally, through the internet, and just see if somebody has easy access to that device and can actually see the live video footage. So very worthwhile to look at those in your environment as well. For one of the great uptakes with in collecting information, I think the more information you have around your environment, the better you can secure it. So there's listed a few products there that go that extra step to be able to look at what sort of analytics are done by a user in the environment, to say, okay, we basically track and collect that information and go, okay, how best can we secure the environment based on that user's habits? And that could be something like only giving privileges. We spoke about the whole concept of least privilege in ZTNA, and ensuring that we only keep that level of access to those that require it, and it's based on their current activities that they require. And also flags to say, okay, well, somebody's using an administrator account here, and they should just be a normal end user. What's the problem with that? And it obviously has certain areas in which can be or certain functionality that give notifications for that those kind of non-compliance. We've already touched on the AR and VR, the augmented reality and virtual reality, so I won't go into too much detail about this. But this is not really necessarily on the security side, but is very useful for training simulations and learning about business applications. We've seen some of our clients even start using this to say, okay, I want to be able to do this training at my organization. How can I do that? Putting on a VR set goes a long way to show somebody without them actually having access to that equipment. It could be potentially dangerous equipment in a plant, for example. So wearing a VR system or some sort of AR system to interact with those devices without potentially causing any issues. And I think uptake, the whole world's changed around having more of these virtual meetings as we are having now, and using these kind of systems to help to still keep that kind of level of interaction that we used to with in-person sessions, but having but instead wearing a headset over it to do it. Obviously, the systems will become predominantly cheaper as time goes on. The Oculus Rift and Quests aren't really too expensive. I know the Apple products is, but yeah, I think over time it will pricing around these will reduce, so it'll be a little bit more easier for companies to partake in these types of technologies. I think blockchain is something that's been spoken about so much over the last couple of years. So just maybe one point to mention out of this around the security side of it is that we know that the technology, with the use of all the cryptocurrencies, we've seen how effective it can be for providing an environment that creates a lot of anonymity and security without having knowledge of all the various nodes or what kind of information actually is getting transferred. So obviously there's any of these technologies can be used for good and bad, but there'll definitely be a lot of progress in this environment around using sort of blockchain technologies to ensure that systems are more secured by ensuring that there's no information throughout that whole process, and you're only interacting with the full blockchain and not interacting with other entities. So it keeps that kind of level of transparency. Prevents transparency, should I say, and it allows for secure communication in that regard. The quantum encryption side, I mean, I think the one thing that's always been a concern is that with encrypting data, maybe some of you have experienced this, where information that you reside with in an organization, to go and encrypt and decrypt quite regularly is quite frustrating, because it increases the amount of time it takes to access that information. You can't do it for a lot of transactional data because it's of that heavy overhead. So using the more, and I'm not going to go into all the science of it, not that, I don't profess to be a scientist in this regard to understand all the quantum mechanics out of it, but it does go a long way to help us to look at a more, I suppose, quicker and faster way of securing information and creating these sort of more secure tunnels through things like quantum cryptography or quantum encryption. And then really just the last one to end off with is around hardware authentication. So we have seen, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that, where you do get a hardware device that has a particular PIN or number on it, and you enter that into a system. We had moved away more to the applications or using other types of two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Now, the concern with that is that there's so many different security, so many different methods in which that data can be intercepted. I know here in South Africa we have a lot of like RICA issues where numbers are taken and have a lot of, and I'm sure the same happens in the rest of Africa as well. And where you have identity theft. So having an actual hardware device of some form, and you get many of these different devices, but it just allows you to ensure that, okay, whatever I have with me is part of that authentication. I don't have to rely on only a communication side. Look, it does mean another factor, another stop to your to doing certain transactions, but for items that are very critical and require a lot of or maybe high level, very high level of access, using those kind of security mechanisms would help us to ensure that other systems can't be bypassed. Right, so that's just really it from me. So I hope I tackled the question there, just on talking about the different technologies and what kind of security mechanisms we can put in place to combat that. Just had a couple of slides and I just wanted to run through those. So Yusuph, anything else you want to add to that?
Thank you very much, Terence. It was really a very good and comprehensive presentation there. I'm glad you touched almost every emerging technology and how we can work around it, which is very good. But also, I think Terence, currently, when we talk about this encryptions, especially quantum encryptions, when people they normally we have a lot of discussions around it, and also when we talk about this the story of blockchain technology, we discussed the issue of cryptocurrencies. We have a huge debate in African countries whether those bitcoins or digital coins can be allowed as genuine or official transaction method within our African continent. And many people speak about the security around it, the challenges that they come along with it. how the criminal manipulate the technology and make bad use of them. How can you advise on this too, Terry?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you said, there's that crypto is something that's quite challenging. I mean, and there's obviously been a lot of push on globally for different banks and governments trying to regulate it in that capacity, because it's not easy to be able to, as you said, work out the inner workings of it and be able to try and prevent certain types of currency. As you said, I mean, a lot of the dark web is run through cryptocurrencies to be able to transfer that tender from one area to the other. So when it comes to securing it, I mean, I think there's a lot of lessons learned out of it that we can partake from a security side of it to say, okay, sort of jumping out of the financial side of it and look at it and go, okay, if it's worked quite well in that area, and it shows that it's definitely possible to have the blockchain to provide that kind of level of security, which is quite, I mean, there hasn't really been many situations where it's a case of, because it works as that entity, it's not easy that it can be hacked. And obviously there's been cases where individuals have had a lot of Bitcoin on their hard drives and then lost it, and without even, there's no sort of way to, or the hard drive itself is damaged and they can't even recover it from there. So I think inherently as a technology, it's secure by that nature. I mean, obviously with anything, there'll always be areas where people want to try and maximize it, or I think most of the theft that's come from it is stealing through the wallets, where it's gaining access to the wallet itself that has the Bitcoin, not really bypassing the actual controls within the blockchain itself. So it's been access to accounts. So there, we spoke of that, where it comes down to basic access controls, and maybe that individual had an easy password that was guessed through, let's say, social engineering, that or a phishing email that came across, and that they entered their details there, and into their wallet they ended up using the same password. So I'd say my answer to that from that perspective is actually just consider all the inherent control, our normal set of controls, the controls we use in NIST and ISO 27000, and a lot of the frameworks that are set up quite considerably for that, where to prevent access into things like the wallets, you ensure that you've got multi-factor authentication enabled, that you've got, we've mentioned the things like ZTNA there, that in your environment, it's not easy to infiltrate it. You have to have explicit access only to that environment, and try and put it at least privilege, as we spoke of there as well. So, yeah, I mean, obviously with any new technology around and as I said, I don't admit to fully grasp all the quantum mechanics out of that. I mean, I think that's a whole nother level of understanding the sort of science behind that. But I think with any technology that comes out, if there's money to be made out of it, people will try their way to manipulate the system as best as possible and try and gain benefit from it.
Thank you very much, Terence. And I think you put it very well. And I think we do not discourage governments to think about these digital coins, bitcoins, and so on. But we I think regulation around it, people to be familiar with the technology before they start putting themselves into it. I think it's quite important, especially when we speak about security point of view to these technologies. Now, let me move into Segun. I know you have been into internet governance, and you've been doing a tremendous job in that area. You've been making a lot of difference to many African countries. Now, one of the big challenge we have today, it's about the policy around cybersecurity. How can we come with a good strategy plan for our country to move on safely, or with tolerable challenges of cyber threats? I think many countries are struggling in this particular area. And you've been advising, you've been providing insight on this particular area for a while now, Ambassador Segun. So let me hear your thoughts. What do you think countries should do more, what is lacking behind, and what they could do more in terms of coming up with good policies, good strategic plans related to cybersecurity that can enhance or foster a better security posture in our countries, organizations, and of course individual perspectives. Segun, over to you.
Yusuph, sorry, was it Segun? Okay, sure. Sorry. Segun, sorry, take over.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you please hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just to be sure that I'm not talking to myself. Yeah, I usually like us as a country or as a continent to start from what we want. What we want would define how we should go about the policy issues. Now, again, I think it's also important for us to start with what we can control. Because if you look at the software, we shouldn't be talking about recreating operating systems and all that. But when it comes to applications and how those applications should be used, what should be the motive behind deployment of those applications, then it will help us to be able to define what exactly do we want to control. And I think this is where we need to be extremely very careful, because once again, we are seeing continents. Let me use Europe as an example. I personally admire Europe very well. Council of Europe, I'm talking about European Union, because they are always coming up with a leadership when it comes to policy interventions. But in this case, I think it is important for us to start looking at what do we want out of artificial intelligence. Then secondly, I also like this idea of looking at the emerging technology in a broader sense. Why not just focusing on the subcomponent of that? That's that. Then again, after we have done that, then we should begin to define what are the appropriate framework. What should be, our policy interests? What do we intend to achieve? What should motivate our actions? Our action is going to be motivated by creating job opportunities or securing the system? Yeah, securing the system is good, but while securing the system, how can we transform that challenge into an opportunity for Africa? I've listened to the last speaker. He gave us very brilliant scopes and ideas about emerging technology, which is very good. I personally like this idea about understanding the domain of emerging technology. So within the context of policies, I think one or two areas that should define what we want and how should we go about it is the skill and the innovations. How do we position ourselves to ensure that Africa play not just a role, but a formidable role, a leading role in engendering a skill development? Because in the scope of things, we have seen that everybody is talking about artificial intelligence everywhere. It has come to stay. But the question we should be asking, how much of these skills do we really have? Then how can we deepen the skills of our continent? How do we look at the gap? How do we identify the gaps in that area? Then when we have the gaps, how do you engender an interventions, a policy framework that could help us to have a remediation that will develop Africa? So let me quickly just give 3 ideas. Number one, it would be ideal for us to have an African-focused AI, or I would prefer emerging technology interventions in the context of conventions. Now, we have that going on in Europe, but Africa, as usual, we wait for the Europe to complete that, then we'll come back and adopt what Europe has already done without understanding the philosophy behind that. So I think it's important for us to define the philosophy first. What do we want? Now, what we want should control and determine and shape the action that we need to take. So number one is to look at the assessment of our needs. Then number two is to look at the peculiarity of the African countries. What is really our problem? What is the problem that we should focus more? Number one is hunger. Number two is poverty. And number three is insecurity. Now, how do you engender or how do you use the challenges identified within the context of deploying cybersecurity for AI? How do we now look at those challenges as an opportunity that can be transformed to be pushed into those arenas to solve our immediate problem? So that's number two. Number three, how do we now look at the skill? How do we develop ourselves to operate at the same level, if not at the same level, but to ensure that we negotiate a substantial cut within the emerging technology economy that is about to explode? Now, and the last one is innovation and ecosystem, or what I can call innovation ecosystem. How much of the R&D of our institutions, the universities, how much are they getting involved? So I think we should look at the transformation of the people as an African, transformation of our processing within the context of emerging technology. How can we integrate AI, for example? How can we integrate AI in our day-to-day application and operations across the borderline, across organization and all that? So there's a need for us to transform the process. Then there's also a need to transform the technology we use itself in the context of the emerging technology. All this would define the governance framework, which will lead us to have a solid policy position. And that position should be defined by what we want to achieve. What do we want? Once we define what we want, then that should motivate us to know how best to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Segun. I see Dr. Jimson Olufuye's hands up there. Would you want to add something on what Segun has mentioned, or you have an intervention? Jimson, Dr. Jimson.
Okay, greetings again, moderator, Yusuph, and the panelists. Very robust discussion indeed. Talking about cybersecurity strategies in the emerging world. Okay. Well, first and foremost, of course, we all know all this constitutes the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, Africa is still grappling with the first industrial revolution, using it well. Segun talked about our challenges, tackling poverty, hunger. We missed the last Millennium Development Goal targets. So what's going to happen? Are we going to miss the SDG as well? So that's why this topic discussion is very, very relevant. And I wish all our governments, the policymakers are here today to listen in. But good thing is that our materials are always online, and people can go back and do a review. That's good. So many of us are here. Those in the government sector, that's a government circle that you can pass the link to afterwards. I think we can do that readily. Well, I just want to let us know too that there are a number of things we don't need to reinvent. There are a number of things we don't need to reinvent. The truth is that because of the governance framework, some regions have gone further. Okay, for example, when you're talking about this data protection GDPR, in fact, of course we know the Europe gone further, and then we just adopted in Africa and so on and so forth. And likewise, we recognize the role of AU and UNECA. United Nations. For example, AU came up with the Malabo Convention, and we're still grappling with getting our governments and policymakers to adopt this. I think from the count of things, just about 15 out of 55 countries that adopted and so ratified. But of course, you can't get enforcement when you just have 15 out of the 55. And then we have a model law. UNECA came up with a model law on cybersecurity. Okay, so there are countries that do not have that, have cybersecurity policy or strategies in place. You can adopt that. But what is the level of adoption? So the highlight of my messaging at this point is to let us know there is value in taking security seriously. Personal security, corporate security. In fact, a United Nations study, which I had the privilege of conducting, show indeed that when we take it seriously, we preserve our wealth and we reduce our losses. Because once you are attacked, once you are scammed, okay, you'll be boxed into losing money. And that is part of your per capita GDP. And for example, when maturity level is about 10%, then we are bound to get some kind of increase in our GDP per capita up to between 0.66% and 5.4%. So even as organization and as a nation. So there's a justification in what UNECA did to let our policymakers take this seriously. We already know internet penetration is helping a lot, okay? And we welcome it, as we have discussed in the previous sections in the ICANN session. In the internet penetration circle, a 10% increase in internet penetration, even in an organization or in any country, especially when we're talking about digitalization now, you're bound to get about between 1%, okay, and 8% increase in GDP per capita. So it's in our interest. We want prosperity. We want to boost our per capita and overall GDP. And digitalization as a policy is in place, for example, in Nigeria, okay? But security of it, not much is being said about it. And I'm happy Segun is also very much involved in shaping the policy to ensure that we secure cyberspace. So just to put that in as we discuss all these emerging opportunities. Thank you very much, Madrid.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jimson, my mentor, my good friend, my brother. I'm so happy that you have added your voice, you being in the industry for a long time, and I believe your insightful contribution was indeed of very good. So let me move on. Omale, I think we have a lot of challenges when it comes to people not getting enough awareness program, the story of having our own skill sets, which are really doing a great job to resolve or to tackle challenges of cyber threats in our countries, organizations, and so on. We unfortunately also see a challenge where we have a number of wrong skill sets in those right places, and we expect them to provide solutions to our problems, but unfortunately we can't really get them, and many other things that we have as troubling things, and of course the collaborations as well. So I want to ask you, Omale, all these things that probably I've mentioned and probably might have other issues that you may raise. How can you advise, if you are asked to advise, how can we do better? How can we enhance all of these to make sure that our cyberspace, our cybersecurity is indeed in check? Omale, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. insightful conversations that's been. I like the perspective of Dr. Jimson, right, around the fact that there's value in taking our security seriously, right, and then from Ambassador Segun around, having an understanding of where we want to be, right? Because if you don't have the end in mind, it will be very difficult for you to know what to do and how to, come together, even as a continent in order to develop these, policies and frameworks that would help us, right? So back to your questions, yes, there are challenges, right? In as much as there are opportunities, and then there are also challenges. It looks as if, the challenges actually outweighs the opportunities that, emerging technologies or, these technologies profile, right? So initially I made mention about, challenge around ethical concern, right? So solving this, we would need to find a way to develop, policies, just to backtrack to what the ambassador mentioned. So there will be need to have, policies being developed and then finding a way to create a sort of ethical guidelines in order to focus on, things around transparency and fairness, right? As Africa per se, there's need to have collaborations or interdisciplinary collaborations that would, involve people from, the technocrats, the policymakers, ethics, to those who are actually skilled in these technologies in order to come together, to establish these ethical frameworks, right? And there's need to also conduct things around like regular ethical assessment of these technologies, because if you have a technology that is here to help solve problems, right? Help make life better. There's need to also have an understanding around the ethical, use of such technologies, right? I saw a question on the chat box around generative AI, right? So we had our elections, months back in Nigeria, and if there was something that was very prevalent, like especially on social media, was issues around fake news, right? So we saw people making use of deep fakes in order to push out very wrong narrative. So you could have a video of an individual saying something, and then when you do carry out further analysis of that video, you just discover it's just a deep fake, right? It wasn't really real. So there's need to come together as a continent in order to work towards establishing these ethical frameworks that would help guide the use of these technologies, right? And we see challenges around security and privacy, right? So if there's something cybersecurity is there for, is to ensure that the privacy and use of, or the privacy and security of these technologies. So beyond using them, there are some of these technologies that would have to impute our PIIs, right? So there's need to know how we're able to secure the privacy of the users of these technologies, right? So there will be a need to sort of implement a robust cybersecurity framework and a sort of privacy preserving technologies to help safeguard these data that would eventually, we'll be using on these technologies, right? And then there are issues around work displacement, like one of the challenges, right? So in as much as the skill gap is still low, you see different reports from, most of these organizations about, low skill gap, skill sets, especially in cybersecurity. So there's need to have a sort of organizations or countries invest in education and training programs. Like, for instance, in Nigeria, recently the federal government, through NITDA, started, a campaign around 3 million technical talents, right? So the whole idea is just to look at how, in a couple of years, the country would have, technical talent that are able to help use some of these technologies in order to solve some of the problems that is facing us as a country, right? So it's best for countries also to look inwards into things like this. So, because beyond living, if you create the policies, you leave the work to a few people, there's need to have, governments coming to also back the actualizations of these policies that would be created, right? And then I mentioned things around like innovation and efficiency, right? So there's need to foster a culture of responsible innovation and efficiency, right? And that takes us back to the guidelines, because if you have a policy or a framework that guides how you use some of these technologies, or how you even create some of these technologies, it helps us to have a grip of, the innovation around the technologies, right? So these are just a few of how we can solve some of these challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omale. Before you go, you spoke of something very, very important. Most of African countries are going through election. In Tanzania, for example, next year, 2024, and the year after, which is 2025, we're going to have general election. And you have said we learn from other people as well. The deep fake, the misinformation, disinformation during election period. And I don't know whether you can share with us your experience. How did Nigeria fix this kind of three problems that we normally see during election? People spread malicious lies upon from other people, trying to destabilize equilibrium of other people's reputation. We call it a character defamations and so on and so on. So how Nigeria addresses this challenge, and how can you probably it was not well addressed. Probably I'm just giving an assumption, and how probably you think it was supposed to be well addressed, so that at least other African countries can cope up with it in a better way. Over to you, Omale.
All right, thank you very much. Like you mentioned, it's actually a problem that we saw during the elections, and yes, it will still be there if we don't have a lot of things being done to tackle the challenges, right? So from my own standpoint, it will be best to invest in education and awareness, right? Before the elections, you have electoral bodies, right, who handle this election. So there will be need for these electoral bodies to make use of, confirmed, by confirmed, I mean, news houses or news outlets who the people know, in order to educate the users, or it's like to be the people who want to vote, right? In order to educate them, for them to know, oh, we have something like this. So during elections, news will be flying about. You have people saying certain things. Right? So there's need for you to pause when you see some of these stories online. Oh, one of your favorite politicians have said something, right? So there's need for you to pause in order to, think over whatever you saw, right? And then try to validate it with the person's standpoint before them. So there's need to invest in adequate media literacy, right? Because the problem is you have just a few percentage of the general populace. I know this would be a challenge all over Africa. So you have like a few percentage of the general population being aware of what's actually happening on the internet. And then you have quite a large number who are not even connected. Some of them don't have social media accounts. The only thing they listen to might be radios, for someone who is in the bushes farming and all of that. It might just be the small radio he has. So there's need to, for the government agencies, right, in charge of education, to invest adequately in media literacy, right? Because when you stay informed, you are able to understand and take actions around whatever thing you see online, right? And also still revolving around education, right? There's need to teach the people about verifying information sources. So it's not enough that I see a story on Facebook. Can I do a quick Google search about such story in order to verify its source, right? So if it's coming from, say, for instance, Dr. Jimson, for instance, now, how would I be able to verify that this particular story is actually from Dr. Right? I can decide to go to his social media and do if he's on any, and then try to search and see, oh, did he actually post this? If I can't verify such information or such source, I know definitely this is, someone somewhere making use of generative AI to spread disinformation, right? So also, there's need to encourage the people in order to report misinformation. So it's not enough that we see misinformation flying around, especially during electoral periods, right? There's need to have outlets or reporting mechanisms that the individuals or population can, report such misinformation. So you understand, coming from the standpoint of awareness, right? You understand that, oh, there's a need to verify whatsoever information or news I see online, right? And then there's need to go further beyond just knowing that, oh, this is a fake news. I need to also report it, right? And beyond reporting, it doesn't stop there. If people don't see that, there are consequences for your actions, the behaviors will just continue. That's just around ethics. So beyond the reporting, the agencies also need to put in mechanism in place in order to punish offenders also, right? It could be by putting out platforms where people report, and then you send out people to make further investigation about it, and then find a way to, punish such misinformation, right? So that's just a bit to it.
Thank you very much, Omale. I think I've picked up that you speak about awareness, very, very important. We need to extend awareness to our people. We need to educate those who are in the electoral bodies to know how they can address these issues of misinformations, these issues of deepfake, and so on and so on. And of course, you mentioned something very important. People have to report challenges or incidents. And of course, after reporting, action should be seen, because if people report and nothing is happening, I think probably people will give up on reporting and so on and so on. Second, I saw your hands up sometimes back and you put it down. I do not know whether you wanted to add something on anything or to intervene. Please.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I'm not using my laptop. I'm using my phone. I have two things to just contribute to it, and that would be all from my own side. I really want to motivate us to look at the broader issues based on the emerging technology context. Because if you look at all the domain of emerging technology, at the intersection of it is data. If you talk about big data, you talk about robotics, you talk about AI, you talk about what have you, it's actually borders on data. So if we can have a comprehensive strategy that deal with how best can we secure our data, and then build the framework of governance into it, I think we'll be able to achieve a better policy setting. And then we should also avoid a silo approach, because we've seen that signal coming already. Everyone is talking about AI ethical issues. Nobody is talking about blockchain ethical issues. Nobody is talking about robotic what have you, data stuff, ethical issues. But we focus more on the AI, how people are using AI for information and all that. But let us look at the emerging technology ethical issues, comprehensive norm, which can be developed and that could help us to address security. Then the second, I really want us to be brutal to ourselves. I want us to look at how cybersecurity can address hunger and poverty. You see, if you look at those people that are committing crime, really financial crime, in most cases, you'll discover that they are mostly insiders. I'm talking about all these ATM card, money disappearing, and all that. Those things, speaks to the poverty level and the mentality of hunger that is in the place. Now, where I'm going is that how can we develop a strategy that will develop cybersecurity industry where those people that are, so to say, not having opportunity to learn skills, they could have skills, because there are so many challenges within the context of cybersecurity. Now, the question is, what are we protecting? Are we protecting the wealth of others, or we are creating the wealth for ourselves and protecting it? So not until when we look at the cybersecurity strategy and see how those strategy can be transformed into an opportunity which can bring about the industry, that those industry can be driven by the Africans,
I think we'll still probably go back. We'll end up having to buy tools from there and there, having to adopt, framework that where we are not even part of the, that formulation of that framework. So it is essential for us to start looking at our mindset. Our problems in Africa is hunger and poverty. So if there are challenges, those challenges should be used to transform to opportunity where those that are in the gaps of poverty can be trained. There's one thing I like about what happened in Nigeria recently. They came up with a training program in which about 3 million will be trained on the various aspects of emerging technology. My organization also came up with training 100,000 youth and young professionals on any areas. As a matter of fact, we have about 35 or about 36 skill set area. And we have been running a lot of free programs because those free programs need to be articulated. They need to be packaged in the way that will be useful and applicable for engagement. Now, what is the target? We are targeting the young ones, the populations of African. I think someone talked about the largest population in Africa now. You have the youth segment. And this youth segment, they are sophisticated, but they are not coordinated. Their skills are not articulated. And then you have challenge in cybersecurity. They are, at the same time, they will become tools and warriors to create crimes. So what I'm saying in essence is that our strategy should have a philosophy. And our philosophy should be born out of our genuine concern to solve our own problem, while at the same time recognizing the need for us to have handshake with international system and all that. So that is important information, I believe, that should be communicated to AfICTA and partners, and AfICTA can begin to look at how to deepen that. And please give me this privilege to say this. In the last section, they talk about top-level domain, stuff like that. I'm looking at the situation where AfICTA itself can also learn from what ISOC did. ISOC owns.org, and then they create opportunity and work out of .org, and then they manage it, and then they build a lot of technical communities, and where knowledge are shared, where opportunities are embedded. Now, AfICTA should look at it, the GTLD, that they can also secure or apply for, and run with it, and create opportunities within their own domain. I think we have all the professional, we have all the network and access that can create this opportunity for AfICTA. So thank you. Thank you
very much, Ambassador Segun, for that tremendous intervention. You spoke about data. Everything is centered to data. We need to come up with a good policy, good laws, and of course, strong mechanism that we can protect our data. I think this is very, very important, and that's why currently we have what we call we have data protection acts across many African countries. We have commissions that deals with data protections, and I think that's a very, very, very key and important thing that we really have to look at and be able to enhance the way we protect our data, the way we do things. And of course, you mentioned about insider threats, how they can jeopardize our data and money because of many challenges within the organization. So I think that's a thing that I've picked up. And I think I've spoken many times about insider threats and how we can mitigate the challenges from the. So probably I'll be able to share. And I remember Dr. Jimson, there was a writing from, I think, Eneka or something that was also addressing issue of cybersecurity. Probably you'll be able to share with us as well, so that people can also benefit out of that particular data or information. I want to move to Terence quickly before I give everyone to wind up. I think I was supposed to finish around 14
minutes, sir.
Come again?
We have
How
just
many? Oh, Okay, okay. Because of that, because the time is not with us, and of course the conversation has become an interesting. I could talk over and over, but now let me quickly start with Terence to give a final remark, and as you give your final remark, you can also share your experience with data protection. I know South Africa did a good job sometimes back with Popia, and I think it was leading in compared to most African countries. So you can a bit share your experience on that as you give your final remarks. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks very much, Yusuph. Yeah, I think when it comes to Poppy, look, Poppy in South Africa has been quite a cumbersome item where it's taken close to 10 years to get to this level. So it definitely hasn't been anything overnight. I think generally from a design perspective, from a South African perspective, our government side is really good at setting up what needs to be in place. Sometimes the implementation side is the part that becomes quite tricky to do. So we're only sort of seeing now the effects that Poppy is actually getting getting mandated to organizations now that it's been fully gazetted and obviously going through all of those levels of approval. Poppy is based on GDPR, so it is quite similar. I think they do say it's about 75% aligned to, but that's also can be very subjective, aligned to GDPR, and obviously has the general same principles. So from a data protection point of view, it does consider all the same domains. But yeah, I think that the adoption, a lot of companies have maybe pushed back from it because it's, they do see, we find a lot of our clients as well. We are helping quite a few organizations with the alignment to Poppy, and some with GDPR because they have the EU linkages as well. Now, I think with any, I suppose this is a general sense in security is, you only put in burglar guards into your house once you actually have a break-in. So it's the same concept with a lot of these, even the compliance side, until they start actually offering fines and doing that kind of level of enforcement, then organizations would obviously pay the money to be able to do those kinds of reviews and obviously implement those controls, and obviously the associated technologies with that as well. So we did see initially, talking about 2-3 years ago, there was a lot of pushback for that, saying no, we'll put it in next year's budget, and it just never really got to fruition. But I think now it's starting to take in from an SA perspective, as a South African perspective, it's taking a lot of getting a lot of momentum. We've seen some very big players in the market. There's in both government and corporate. So departments of justice were in non-compliance to Poppy and have been issued a fine for it. I know that there's a lot of back and forth between that, and I haven't seen any organizations being forced to pay it as yet, but it is getting a lot of traction in that area. Other one would be probably Dischem is quite a big retailer here in South Africa in the pharmaceutical areas, pharmaceutical retailer, and they've been in the news and quite public with that of their issues from a Poppy non-compliance as well. So I think it definitely has taken a lot of traction, and it is a bit sad in one case to see that the only way we get to implement these kind of security controls that would benefit the organization is through these kind of compliance mechanisms. But at the same time, if whatever serves the purpose at the end of the day, I think all of us are trying to make other organizations that we work at or work with to help them to be more secure and combat against these. So if it does take a certain level of compliance to try to enable that, then I think it's for the betterment of that organization as well, and us as individuals too. Thanks, Yusuph.
Thank you very much, Terence. Segun, I know you want to go to another important meeting. Quickly, can you give your final remark before you go?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, like I said earlier, I'm actually using my phone. Thank you very much. My final recommendation, I want to see AfICTA leading or co-leading the efforts in facilitating the emergence of of a strategy or whatever at the African Union level that should be business led. Whatever we need to do in the context of that must contain initiatives that empower business in Africa. And I'll still reemphasize it. And I want to propose, maybe we should look at cybersecurity, how cybersecurity can address hunger and poverty in Africa. Because there are a lot of opportunities, skills, there are lack of skills in cybersecurity in Africa. Most of the skills that you have in Africa, they are the management and risk, they are at the risk management level. But the technical skills are lacking. Software skills are lacking. Solid deep learning on architectures, they are lacking. The generic knowledge about cybersecurity from the context of technology, they are lacking. So there's a need for us to build a skill level or skill proficiency level. And the best way we could do that is to ensure that we redefine whatever policy or strategy in the context of what we need to do now. We can't control AI from taking over everything, but we can control how we shape ourselves, how we shape the AI, or how we deploy AI to help to solve our own problem. Let me say this. Very soon, AI will be making guys to new jobs. It's starting already. So where do you want to put people that have been working in RMs before? So my own point is that we should have a pan-African interventions, and those interventions should help address our main problem. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to hear me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Segun, for that. And I don't know whether we have a picture later, Secretariat.
Sure.
We have the picture later.
Just as you round up, technical will call for pictures.
Okay, so I think Segun, you can hold on for a while before you go so that we can take pictures together. Okay. Quickly, final remark to you, Omale. Your final remarks.
All right, thank you very much, Yusuf. It's been an engaging discussion so far. And on a final note, just as one of our speakers earlier mentioned, there is value tied to us taking our security very seriously, right? And in as much as these new technologies are here to stay, we can't do anything about it because they're already changing the way we do businesses. They change the way even how country functions now. So for us as Africans, right, to count ourselves as those they call secure creators, we must be enablers of these emerging technologies, right? And how can we do that? It's by building a workforce of the future, right? And in order to do this, I'll just say two things. First is to find a way on how to develop our own local skill set. Some countries have started it, but I think other countries should also follow suit. So find a way to develop our own local skill sets and then also develop and improve on our own localized governance frameworks in order to meet our own needs, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've seen Dr. Jimson's hands is up. Any intervention?
Yes, thank you very much. Just a quick one. And just to say indeed that contrary to many beliefs, because this is very important, Africa, we do have some level of expertise. We do have some level of expertise. We may not have gotten to critical level. I think we should be talking about, we need to get the critical mass. But we have some technical know-how. Okay, we just did that research for UNECA. Normally, they could have taken it, say, maybe to Europe, to America. But we did it locally. And we use mathematical methods, statistical techniques. We build data center in our company. Data center that have been running for decades. And, we built it from ground up. We have expertise for coding, developing software, for digitalization, and what have you. Well, but the key thing is we need a critical mass. Okay, so that any new opportunity, our government people will not take the job to America, to Europe. They say, oh, they've said they don't have any expertise in Africa. So we have some expertise. We need to build it. We need to train our people. Very correct. And we appreciate the effort of about technologies, Segun, all the build up to skill development. We need more capabilities. Very, very, very critical. And we welcome idea. I believe the AfICTA executives elect that will be taking over after the AGM today, I believe they will welcome proposal on how to engage more, create more opportunities for our businesses. That's why we are here, to fulfill the promise of the digital age for everyone in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. From my end, I think it was really engaging session. I'm grateful that I was with my brother Omale, Samwel, also Terence, Fogarty, and Ambassador Segun. From my end, I think I could say that we have to do more to protect our critical infrastructure, to protect our money, protect our data. And for that to happen, we must make sure that our people are equipped with knowledge. And when I speak about knowledge, I speak about cybersecurity awareness, the capacity building, and of course, we need to make sure that we collaborate among ourselves in Africa. We need to share information and intelligence to make sure that these challenges of cyber threats, challenges of cyber crimes and all are not really cripple our critical infrastructure, cripple our economy and so on. In addition, I think it's quite important for AfICTA to take the leads. Last, was it 2021 or 2022, Chair of AfICTA spoke of making sure that we lead when it comes to cybersecurity awareness programs, but unfortunately, probably we couldn't do it very good. I call upon AfICTA to take the lead when it comes to making sure that our people are filled up with cybersecurity awareness knowledge, the basic knowledge on how they can protect themselves from these challenges and so on and so on. And the last thing I want to mention here is that, the technology keep on changing. We have a lot of challenges. Things will keep on coming up, bringing troubles, and then we come up with solutions and so on and so on. So continuous improving people's skills through capacity building is something very, very important. I've seen several questions from my good friend, Advocate Mandipa. Many of them, I think they'll be answered in writing. From where you put your question. Thank you very much, Nandipa. I saw all those questions and I acknowledge them. And of course, I've seen a lot of other comments from many saying that they're taking notes and so on and so on, and they're very grateful for this session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for being a part of this session, Cybersecurity Strategy for Emerging Technologies. Thank you very much, my panelists. Thank you very much, the organizer of this, I mean the chair or the committee that was organizing this particular summit. I'm talking about the newly elected chair, Ulandi. I think it was very good, and I'm grateful. Thank you very much, and over to you, the moderator, our chair of this particular conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful session, anchored, of course, by Mr. Yusuph Kileo, our cybersecurity expert, where we have been discussing about cybersecurity strategies for emerging technologies. If you're just coming in, it's good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. You're welcome to, of course, the 11th AfICTA Summit with the theme Transforming Africa's Economy Through Digitalization for Sustainable Development. Prior to now, the poll has been open to all our audiences. Please respond to our polls. We will be going to the virtual session, the virtual exhibition. But before we step into the virtual exhibition, please be informed that the committee in charge of the summit, with the approval of the AfICTA leadership, has decided to issue a certificate of participation, which is very key to ensuring that people understand that we have gone through a reorientation, relearning, and understanding of where we should be as Africans. The QR code will be embedded in such a way that all participants can get this certificate of participation at the rate of just $20 each only. If you have any further information, please kindly reach out to the AfICTA Secretariat via info@aficta.africa. That will be shared on the chat room so that we can take note of it. If you have any information, please reach out to AfICTA Secretariat at info@aficta.africa. That being said, technical, please take pictures quickly. We're taking pictures quickly. And while pictures is being taken, let us go into the virtual for just 3 minutes. 3 minutes while we expect everyone that will be in the next session.
Was taken already?
Technical will be handling that right now, simultaneously. Well, we are buying time. We're buying time. Technical, am I right?
Sure.
Okay, so why would
fast to that, please let's on our cameras, the panelists. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to be counting down 3. Okay, now I can see more people joining. Great session indeed. 3, 2, 1, 0. So thank you so much. We appreciate all the panelists and great job done by Mr. Yusuph Kileo. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have just 2 minutes.